you're a brother, whether you're a mother, you're staying alive, you're staying alive. Feel the city breaking and everybody shaking, and we're staying alive, staying alive.
All right, this is Staying Alive, the podcast, and I'm Louie J, your host, and thank you for joining me today. We have had an incredible week of news in Southern Ontario, where we're from, of course, and thank you for joining us. If you've come across the pond, we've had some people from England that have sent a very nice email saying that they enjoy this format and the fact that we're kind of getting our feet wet and figuring out, what our story is. But I'm grateful. I think having those communications and those connections around the world from, what started out to be just a conversation is a very good takeaway. But yeah, we've been bombarded with news in the last 10 days, and it's been very heavy. It's been very difficult to navigate what's next and what's new. And of course, as always, Frank is here with me, so we're going to talk about some of those things today. Hey, Frank.
Good morning. How are you?
Good morning, bud. Yeah, I'm really well. I mean, I'm as usual optimistically looking for something great to come our way, and I can't wait to see that come to light. However, there's been some challenging moments. I mean, we're talking about the recent lockdown, shutdown, open. Really, it depends on who you're asking, but I can't tell you at any particular time of the day what we're doing because it's so confusing. Our local politicians, have repeatedly said that they are following the direction of their chief medical officers, and of course, we're talking about COVID yet again. I always feel like we're kind of just whining about it, and I never want to be that guy or that conversation that's just whining without some actionable items. But anyway, we've heard forever that the direction was always going to be taken from the advice of the chief medical professionals. And that sounds like a good story until you recognize that they're not speaking the same language anymore, and they're not taking the advice of their top medical advisors. And that just happened where Ontario, had moved into a number of different zones, which are already confusing to begin with. But then you add to it that they're modifying zones, and that becomes another layer of confusion because you can't really understand why. And when you hear that it's conflicting what the advisors are suggesting they do, then you're even more confused. And what happens there is we lose faith, we lose confidence in our leadership. And I think confidence is so eroded right now that it's going to really prevent any actionable items that can come out with a positive result because people are just tired. They're really at the end of the rope. I say there's no more rope, but we just saw it happen. We were put into a modified lockdown, a different zone, which allowed, capacity visits for retail environments. It did not allow personal services to open, nail salons, barbershops, hair salons, and personal gyms, things to that effect. It didn't allow those things to open, but you could shop, and you could shop in retail environments at a 25% capacity, and you could also shop in essential retail environments like grocery stores at 50% capacity. So that, was a direction and a change that we all kind of just listened to. We adopted quite quickly. We criticized it in a lot of respects, thinking, wait a minute, the case count seemed to be going up. Why are we allowing this to happen? But I think for the most part, it was something that was wanted, and small business owners were happy they can open their stores again and get people to do more than curbside pickup. So you have this conflict. Is it commerce and economy over health and safety? And that's been the challenge and the dichotomy of this whole conversation from day one.
For a year, past a year.
For past a year now. And so, for me, that seemed to be, okay, well, are we all in this? Because as we see the large businesses thrive, we still have kind of a mounting pressure on small business to be able to figure out what's next. And then the announcement that personal services would reopen on April 12th. And that again became an announcement that flew in the face of every direction that we heard before that. Every conversation was, we're listening to our medical officers. And the minute that announcement was made, we heard the reactions from the medical community
Quickly.
very quickly. They're saying, what is it that you're doing? Why would we even consider this? We're almost at capacity for our ICU beds, and we're going to strain and stress our system beyond its capabilities. And that we know isn't what we're out for. It's not going to be a sustainable solution. So what exactly are we doing? I quite frankly thought it was a pacifier. Mm-hmm. It was an announcement to get the pressure off them. Small business has been screaming for now upwards of 6-8 months. You know, we kind of all listened to the beginning, followed the direction because that's what we do. Some people opposed it, and for the most part, I think that we all just were waiting for solid direction. And here we are, you know, a year later, and your opening really, like I said, flew in the face of logic.
Yeah.
It didn't make any sense. ICU beds are on the rise. The numbers were on the rise. Yet you thought it was okay to open up patios within 24 hours. And then a week later, you were going to allow personal services to open, you know, with some modifications, capacity inside the environments again. And so, well, the restaurants scrambled to get their patios ready, invested thousands and thousands of dollars. You know, just think about what happens when somebody says you get the chance to go tomorrow at midnight. I mean, you want to take advantage of it because you need to recoup, right. But you've gone out now and you've bought outdoor heaters. You may have erected a tent. You might have to purchase or rent a tent, no less the flooring for patios that would have had to been, you know, immediately erected. And then think about the business operation behind that.
The inventory, the food inventory, the booze inventory, the beer inventory. I heard the owner from Antler Restaurant downtown bought 2 kegs, full kegs, tapped them because they said you could open. And now he said, I'm sending the bill to the premier.
I've heard a lot of those stories too, where they're like, reopening costs need to be covered. We need to be whole because you basically gave us the green light. And let's recognize this. In a lot of respects, they don't know when, if, and how. So I get that. You know, we've got to be nimble. We've got to be flexible. However, there's been such a long runway to understand more now than we ever have about how this operates and what it takes to reopen, and the effort that small business has to kind of dive through the hoops and loops to be able to get there, only to say that a week after you've been given permission and the green lights are a go, that you now have to shut it all down. And that, of course, for us, when they announced that we were opening, I cautiously held back. We ordered inventory. There was no question, like most retailers, because when the doors are open, if I'm allowed to sell, I need to be able to move product and get them in the hands of people that want them the most. So that's the business we're in, you know. So, of course, you want the shelves to be stocked. So we place our inventory order, and just like the restaurants, we talked to our staff, we rescheduled, we came up with opening week schedule because you inevitably are going to be packed, packed in the sense of constantly have bookings. And then you have to go through the retraining, the you know, what's going to happen for a reopening training. So you schedule your staff for that. They spend time on Zoom calls with you. If you're doing this right, you know, there's so much preparation that has to happen. I thought it was, like I said, a pacifier because they gave restaurants 24 hours notice and they gave personal services 2 weeks. Here's the businesses that have been patiently waiting. We closed down November 23rd, worst possible time. We closed down November 23rd, like every other personal services shop.
2020.
And what happened there was we cleaned our shops. We did all the precautions to be able to be ready for reopening when we did get the reopening. And then, of course, you get the go-ahead, the green light, you're coming back in and you're cleaning again. So our shops were ready to go. And with what could have been a half a day effort, maybe a full day to prepare, we were given 2 weeks for it. Whereas restaurants that were already kind of, you know, at capacity because they were doing takeout, had their team rolling in a very familiar environment, were given 24 hours to completely disrupt that environment.
So we should really take a hard look at why the 2 week notice, and was it a complete setup from the beginning? Like, This is the problem. When we get this information, there's no explanation. They say they're transparent, but there's no explanation. Once again, they never present any data whatsoever that tells us, look, folks, 2,000 people came and sat on this outdoor restaurant. 1,400 of them got sick. Here's our contact tracing list. We got to shut it down. Nothing. It's just boom, no outdoor dining. And I understand. Look, I understand. It's this whole health and safety and morbidity, right? Like
Yep.
we just don't want people to die and get sick.
No.
I get it. But where is the data that shows that that is the right move when all the other data is telling us by whistleblowers that an Amazon plant has 400 cases in there and they're not shut down? That doesn't make any sense.
That's where I think that you're right. Communication is lacking. There's no transparency to it. And quite frankly, I don't need to know everything. I don't need to know the inner workings of how they make decisions. However, just shedding some light would give me the confidence that I think that they're good decisions, because when you arbitrarily put out, an open, a close, and we don't understand why, then we face that challenge where, again, we're losing confidence. And when you lose confidence in your people, then you've got nobody to help author your story. And this is, it's not limited to this COVID environment. It's a conversation around leadership. This could be translated into business at any time during this conversation. You could take COVID out of it and put in leadership and talk about how leadership leads. And when you haven't communicated effectively, clearly, with purpose and with drive and with intention,
what the goal is, right?
When you get into that intention, what are we looking to do here? And if we don't get to our goal, what's going to happen as a result? Then I think you got to break it down. And in a lot of cases, when you get back to that, that idea of I'm here to guide you, and we're making decisions on your behalf, then I think it's their obligation and responsibility to make that very clear, and they haven't. And this, of course, was evidenced yet again 2 or 3 days ago when they came out with conversations that said the schools are going to be shut down. We're going to online learning in Peel anyway. In our region, we're going to online learning for 2 weeks, and all we've heard, for the course of the last couple of months, maybe more, is that schools need to stay open. They are a safe environment, and we keep on hearing about all these outbreaks that are happening. So one more, fuel to the fire where I've lost confidence in what you've said, because it just doesn't make sense. It's not true.
Well, there's definitely two camps now from not the Premier's office, but I mean the Premier is saying one thing and then the health experts are saying another. At first he was saying, we just listen to the health experts.
Right.
And then they started pushing this narrative where schools are safe, schools are safe, schools are safe. And I wonder where that comes from. I believe that they're trying to prevent any kind of renegotiating tactic with the school unions. This is just my theory. It's like they're definitely trying to avoid something because there's an end game after COVID. And you know that this party really wants to take a lot of funding out of the education system, and it seems like a lot of parents are very upset about what's going on, and I totally understand. But it just seems like there's a motive behind pushing that narrative of schools are safe. Maybe they are, maybe they're not, but they're not proving it. They're not showing us any data saying, look, out of all the thousands of schools that are open, we've had one case.
Right.
So clearly, and I see it through my kids, it is good for them to be with their friends, being with masks on and everything. But man, for their mental state, it's awesome. And we have to be concerned about that too, because there's your physical and mental state that we want to make sure that we remain healthy. But soon after, when the medical professionals come up there and announce that the schools are closed, it's like, oh, is there a power struggle going on now? Mm-hmm. Now this is like, we don't want to turn it political, but it is.
Yeah.
And as people from this province, the public, we are so confused right now because the leader is saying this and the health professionals are saying that.
That's where we have the biggest challenge. And if you're really trying to to get a momentum or a movement going, you've got to be clear, and it's clear that they haven't been. The bigger challenge for us is when we hear little sound bites that we take away, and that becomes the part of the conversation. I mean, what have you talked about to any of your friends other than COVID? You know, for the last it seems like 100 years.
If I see somebody I haven't seen in a while, it's like, please tell me something new.
Yeah, please.
And it is, please tell me something new. And it's like, what do you want me to say? It's the same. And then it slowly guides into, isn't this crazy? What are they doing now? And then we start analyzing and trying to break down where all the bad decisions and good decisions were made.
Yeah, we're armchair critics.
And we still not in the know. We don't have the data to, we're a bunch of knuckleheads here talking about this stuff.
That's what I said. I'm just a humble merchant that if I don't get it and, I'm trying to be the average, like what happens here? And so me being the average guy, having conversations with my family and friends, and when we all conclude that we don't understand what's happening, then it tells me that you've done a really piss poor job of getting that message out. And we are no further ahead in the understanding than we were when I can go back to March 2020. And that's where our biggest challenges for our movement forward are going to be presented. We just don't have the faith anymore. And, I'll bring up something that Christine Elliott said in the press release when they were going to do.
Who's she?
So she's Minister of Health.
Okay.
Now I feel like she's a Minister of I believe Health.
I'm going to Google
for Ontario.
This is a new thing we're doing now. We're Googling stuff.
On the fly.
We're
so advanced here at the Staying Alive podcast that all of the research we do with our research department in advance of this is we're really being conscious of how we prepare for these. In any case, Christine Elliott said this.
Deputy Premier of Ontario.
I'm sorry. Geez, Christine, my apologies. Deputy Premier of Ontario. Point was, it's just she was speaking about mental health. That was why I confused her with Minister of Health. In any case, the question to her was, if ICU beds are filling and the numbers are showing that we're on the rise, and you're imposing a modified lockdown, why wouldn't you just go to a stay-at-home order? Isn't that the logical thing to do? And the response to that question, and a variety of questions like that, was, for the mental health of our young people and adults, and I'm not sure what lies in between, but the mental health of our young people and adults, we believe that a stay-at-home order is not the right thing to do for us right now when we want them to get outside and enjoy the weather as the weather starts getting better. It's really important to be able to be outside. And that, again, is a confusing message because in our last stay-at-home order, we were told that it's okay to go for walks, with somebody in the household, that you really should get outside and enjoy the weather when it came in. I get that. But here's the reality. Here's what they have missed in that conversation. Nobody cares how beautiful the weather is and how much of a sun-shining day it is when you are consumed by the fact you might not make rent.
Mm-hmm.
When you're consumed by the fact that you don't know where your car payment's coming from, when you've got to explain to your children that they can't get what they were asking for because that's the lifestyle that you've lived their entire life, and now you've got to be cautious in how you spend. The sun doesn't matter when you're food insecure.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's happening to people that work for small business, that own small business. They're facing the fact that they may not have enough to not only not keep the business open, but now how does that translate into their personal lives? So I could tell you quite quickly that you're out of touch when you say that it's for the mental health of our young people and adults to be able to get outside, when we all know that if we look to leaders around the world that have eradicated this disease or this virus or have flattened the curve to a point where it's ahead of the curve, where they've controlled it. You look at New Zealand, you look at Singapore, you look at Taiwan, Vietnam, and I can't think of some other places, but the examples were that they were aggressive, that the leaders were like very aggressive, very determined. They communicated well. They were clear in their direction. Everybody understood why they were doing it. And the goal was that after 28 days, we are going to squash this, and then we're going to get back to some semblance of normal. And they did that, and if in fact there was the potential danger, or it presented itself again, then they shut it down again. And they did it in a way that was systematic, and everybody knew, and they participated because they respected the leadership. So when you've got a disconnected leadership that says that I'm interested in making sure that you can get out and enjoy the sunshine when people are on the brink of
collapse, right?
Collapse, depression, anxiety, add to that the fact that they just don't know. And when I'm at least going to hang on to some faith that something's got, a good decision-making process in the background, and that's out the window now, like, I don't think you really haven't well represented the people that have put you in power, and that's evidenced by how many people are angry by the fact that the decision makers aren't coming close to suffering the same challenges that you and I and a bunch of people like us are. They've not gone without a paycheck. They've not gone without their benefits. They've been able to manage their lives very much the same as pre-COVID, with the exception, ideally, of them following rules. And we've even seen leadership compromise that, where they've been caught in other regions and they've taken trips. And, that's when all of us kind of look at each other and go, what's going on here, man?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not listening to you. I'm tired of it. My biggest challenge, my biggest issue is this obvious disconnect with the people that have put you in place. We have been asking for X, Y, and Z for a long time. I don't want to be that complaining guy, like I said, but I can't help it. Like, you go back to our lockdown on November 23rd, and from a retail perspective, the cases were already rising at the beginning of November. Why would you not have been aggressively attacking the situation then? Shut everything down. And I'm being frank about this. No, you're frank. I'm being Louie about this. There would have been some pushback, I'm sure. There would have been some complaining. But if we had been told, listen, guys, I'm really sorry, but we need to put this, flame out. So we're going to have to douse a lot of water on it. It means that we're going to shut everything down for 28 days, 14 days. I don't care. But it's going to be a mass shutdown.
Well, you also hear at that time, the borders are closed, all flights have stopped. That didn't happen.
It never happened.
My house, I live near the airport, and from time to time, the planes pass over our neighborhood, depending on the wind direction. Well, for days, planes were continuing to land. It's like, okay, I understand there's FedEx and there's the shipping aspect of it, but it was like, we were getting the Flight Path app, and it would tell you where the planes were coming from and it was amazing. But it was like, what's going on? I thought it was shut down. And then the borders, like all the shipping and everything kept going, the commerce part, but still, it's like, is it a shutdown or is it a shutdown? And, I really wish even the second go around, they could have said, look, everything stops. 14 days, everything stops.
Everything stops.
You have 2 weeks to stock up.
Yep.
You have 2 weeks to prepare, and we're going on a staycation.
Yeah.
And that's it. Nothing moves. Don't even start your car up. Everything just a pause, reset.
Just pause, reset. I think
where would we be right now?
That's the, you don't have that, like I said before, rear view mirrors are small.
Yeah.
Because you got to look back at the small things. However, that would have been massive for us. We would have been able to have a case against it. We would have seen the results against it. And then we would have known if this is the right thing for us to move forward. So we didn't do that number 2 wave. We're at number 3 wave. This is the third time they've had the opportunity to do the right thing, and they haven't. Even these modified lockdowns come under major criticism because, as you saw on all social media channels, that Ontario's in lockdown again, and then they pan to Yorkdale Mall.
Yes.
And I'm like, if this is lockdown, if we were to fast forward this 50 years from now and left that little video clip in the what's it called, time capsule.
Yeah, that's the pandemic days.
Remember the pandemic days when they locked us down? You remember what did you see what they did? And look at Yorkdale Mall and the
IKEA,
thousands of people, thousands, and of course, man, I feel like a broken record, but they're not distancing, they're not following the rules, there's nobody doing temperature checks like small business like ours would have been doing. So anyway, all that aside, I think I feel like a broken record and nobody's listening. And to that point, now I think there's this civil demonstration. There's a civil protest that's about to mount, and a lot of people have asked me to head it, and I'm concerned because I only like doing things that are productive, that are going to come out with an end game, and we're going to move forward. And I think maybe it might be the time when civil disobedience becomes part of the conversation, and we need to rally to let our governments know, guys, like, we're tired of this. You can't have a conversation where somebody's not confused. That's a problem. And what you're saying doesn't make anybody happy. Like, we're not getting what we need from you. So you better listen, or else that civil disobedience will turn into something else. And then it's total anarchy and chaos. Like, what's going to happen then?
Well, and that's just it. Like, that's one of the questions that I had for today's podcast is like, we're always, when I see friends or whatever, and we start discussing that, and we point out the flaws, and then it always ends with, well, what are you going to do?
Right.
What are you going to do? What can you do? And it's like,
fingers crossed.
What can we do? I don't want to be just the guy who's pointing out flaws and complaining about it. I also want to present ideas,
right?
To go, what about this? And how do we make this flourish into something? Like, you did a great thing on social media with the white flag. And I noticed more people in your community that were business owners were waving the white flag in front of their small businesses to make that point that we surrendered. You guys have really decimated us, and here we are. But it caught on, and it's like, how do we present ideas so that we don't sound like we're shouting? We don't sound like, oh, we hate you because you're this party. I don't give a shit what party you're in.
Matter.
I don't care.
No.
I want decision makers and smart thinkers. And also, too, if you're going to lay out a plan, you need to kind of present the details and why. Not, this is just it. It's like, look, we're gonna take the model from wherever where it was successful and try and apply it here. That's a great conversation.
Right.
Okay. Tell us what they did over there. Well, what's different from that area compared to this? Well, okay, they're an island. All right, a little easier to stop the flow of things. Okay, so how do we mitigate that? Get that conversation going, put that into place, and see what the result is. You said it on the last podcast. If you continue to do the same thing over and over again and expect a different result,
it's your definition of insanity.
Right.
That's so a couple of things there. I'm going to describe what that white flag campaign was.
Yeah.
That really came out of an opportunity for us. I mean, we just came in to start cleaning the shops, and then that same day, the announcement was that we will no longer be opening personal services businesses on April the 12th. And for us, it was like I said, for me, I had an idea that it wasn't going to happen to begin with, but I joined my community and I moved forward with intent and happiness, and was very celebratory in the fact that we are going to get back to something. And so we prepared. But when we got that announcement that day, it felt like the rug got pulled out from underneath us. And we all just looked at each other and said, what is going on here? Like, what really is going on? So my response is almost always to amplify tragedy with comedy.
Yeah.
Because I feel like, yeah, you can scream and shout and be very angry and frustrated. And that, I think there's a place for. I'm not quite there yet. I'm not far from it, I guess. But I thought we could make a bigger story by amplifying this tragedy and using some humor along the way. And so from behind the cash register here, I raised the white flag, which is almost always a symbol of surrender. And when does that happen? It happens when a soldier can't fight anymore.
Right.
that they have to give up because they need now to be protected because they're going to lose their lives.
Right.
And that's when you give up and you
Right.
surrender. And I felt helpless. I felt like I can't do anything more. I can't do anything for my community. I'm now going to be challenged to do things for charity, which is something that I'm very, very active and part of. And I want to continue doing that. Even if I'm challenged, I still know people are way more challenged than me. I constantly want to give. Now I can't do that. And so I keep on seeing these moments of frustration where it's like, I give up, man. And I don't think the story of surrender, it can be taken many different ways. Like you're just going to turn around and take the beatings. That's not what's happening here at all. That effort to raise the white flag was to simply be a symbolic representation of we give up on you. That's the story. I'm giving up on you and your direction because you are not making me comfortable, happy, understanding. You haven't done anything to really make me feel like I need to support this any longer. And now, left to my own devices, I would consider that white flag campaign more like a reset and more like a Trojan horse. And we all know what happened there.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you explained that because I look at you, you're an entrepreneur. Entrepreneurs never surrender. They always seem like they're digging through an unsurmountable mountain of problems to solve to bring a business to where they want it to be in their mind. And when that's a question that I wanted to ask too, as a person that's in a business, is like, when do you surrender or do you ever surrender? Because some people might have a vision of this idea of a concept or whatever, and they bring it to fruition. But a lot of people probably say, this is not going to work. Because of X, Y, Z, and they just sometimes they get blinded, and for the sake of monies and dollars, it's like, when do you surrender or do you surrender?
I mean, I've said it before where I think entrepreneurs are problem solvers, natural engineers to solve problems and overcome challenges. That's, I think, one of our superpowers. Mm-hmm. However, everybody's got their own threshold for pain. And the tolerance levels vary, and that could be financially motivated. It could be emotionally motivated. And in this case, you've thrown every possible challenge at small business, at schools, at work environments. If you're an employee, you've thrown every possible challenge at them. And it breaks my heart to see when somebody finally does give up and the paper goes in the windows and you don't see that business any longer, because you know that had to have been their breaking point and there was no point of return. That's, to me, a very, very sad reality. And knowing that that was preventable, I would hope that there was a chance to prevent it, and we didn't. Then that's where it becomes, more of a tragedy than anything, where you now recognize that they had to give up everything. What did they put into it, and how long were they moving forward with this? Just like, here's the other part of that story. So there's been some relief along the way. Let me just finish off on the white flag. Mm-hmm. So there has been momentum. There has been movement. And we've seen small business start to say, I'm with you, brother. I'm with you. We've also seen some criticism saying, never surrender. I want you to understand clearly, this is not a surrender movement. It's, I give up on you. I'm surrendering you. You no longer give me the faith and confidence that you can direct things that are going to be in my favorable outcome, the benefit that I'm looking for. So that's where that flag turns into a unification flag. It becomes a representation, a visible symbol to say, we're done. Like, we are done. That doesn't mean we're out. That just means that you've pushed us to all the limits, and we're going to have to come up with a new plan. And that's all I've been asking for the whole time, come up with a new plan. And to your point about, so what happens when we all start talking about this and have our own ideas, and how do we share that and get emotion going to be able to say, this is what you should be doing. And, we all have the faith that the people that are in control and we've elected are all, connected and educated and make logical decisions. We're beginning to question whether that's the case or not, because collectively, if you came out with a story that 90% of your population didn't get, then I don't think you did a good job collectively. So I'm not convinced that this is the right group to make this decision. But my point is that what do you do when you raise the flag and you say, I'm done? I think you should do it like this. How do you actually become a voice for change? And I've noticed this is the beauty of the time we're living in right now. We are so connected that there's a number of organizations and associations that have popped up literally overnight. The Beauty Alliance of Canada, the Women in Business Alliance of Canada. Like, there's been these groups that have been spearheaded by people that were just sick and tired of listening and not doing, and not having a place to put their voice. They've created platforms, websites, petitions for us to share and support. And I think that those are important, vehicles to be able to get those messages across. So I would say in your neighborhood, then start looking for, if you feel like your voice isn't being heard, but a number of people are speaking your same language, then look for those associations, sign up for their newsletter, sign the petition, let them present on your behalf the things that you think are going to move this forward and get us out of this rut. My thinking is that it's going to be information that they've all considered, that they haven't acted on. But when enough people rally behind it, you've got no choice but to listen. Mm-hmm. Me as an independent business here, raising a white flag would be very unceremonious. It would be uneventful. But now that we've got 10 of them on the lakeshore in my community, people are starting to ask the question, what's that mean? I saw one of the business owners the other day putting up the white flag, and as I went over to take a quick photo, one of the passerbys said, you're not giving up, are you? And he said, no, I'm fighting. And, I love the fact that although it represents one thing in most people's minds, we can come out with a new narrative and say, this is not exactly what it means. Let's be prepared for what it's about to mean. And that's where I think we've got an opportunity as a community to be able to rally behind somebody that's prepared to present ideas, share ideas, exchange this, notion. Where else is that's been most evident? In this, I would consider this a fairly flawed vaccine rollout. And I say flawed because, there has been a 8-month runway here, on how to logistically put this together and do it right. And sadly, we saw massive lineups for seniors that couldn't stand in the cold for 2 or 3 hours. We've seen registration challenges for the online, appointment booking system for people that don't have computers. And, you see politicians that are very, very happy to be able to drive you to the polls to have you vote for them. But I haven't seen that in trying to find people that need to get vaccinated and not have the wherewithal to get to a vaccination center. I haven't seen the kind of commitment that you see when people need their vote. So that to me is a real sticking point. The challenge there is that we saw logistics people criticize the rollouts, and then we saw almost an immediate overturn of some of these environments where it was like that was hugely inefficient 2 days ago, and then they got it. Mm-hmm. They got it going. They had consultation from other people. They started drive-in vaccination centers that were modeled from people that said, this is completely flawed. You should be doing drive-ins here, and this is how your drive-ins should be working. And they made it to the news.
So they actually listened to outside sources.
Well, it would appear that way. Otherwise, maybe it was a trial and error process for them where they had that in their back pocket and they employed it once they realized that their solution wasn't effective. But I saw criticism right away, which then I think put pressure on them. Right. And that's with that mounted rally behind a motion, like to say, I don't get it. Here's what I think you should do. And by the way, there's 100,000 people behind me that also think we should be doing like this. Right. And if we're going to really hurt, if we're really going to hurt or affect change, then we've got to do it where it's going to hurt. And 100,000 people that are voting means that there's 100,000 people that could be either yes or no. Right. So, if that's the goal, and sometimes I think this posturing and this, decision-making is really to make sure that the next vote is secured, then if that is your goal, I don't care. Just do what these people over here think you should be doing. Let's get behind this and let's get this thing done. People say to me, you should be rallying. You should be the charge and rallying people together, because this lockdown is, going to kill business. Here's the thing: I'm not opposed to lockdowns, and that's probably shocking to a lot of people because most small business people saying I need to be open. I'm saying safe reopen. I'm saying logical plan. I'm saying if we need to be locked down, then it's all or nothing. Don't give me a lockdown that has, my neighbors and their neighbors and their neighbors shopping at the mall for the newest, I don't know, T-shirt. That's not necessary. I'm saying that it's never been commerce over care. And that's where I think if I speak to any small business owner, they've also agreed with that. We're not asking for things that are reckless or irresponsible. We're asking for responsible, safe reopening, put protocols in place, and more than anything, level the playing field and erase the inequities that you've created here with that monster and Goliath and this David over here, because that's who we are. But now we're beginning to realize that we are a big force.
Right.
There's over 400,000 small businesses in our community here. And collectively, that would be a very, very determined, driven group of people that are just saying, listen to what we have to say. We should be listening.
I hope that a lot of these smart thinkers that own businesses do get together via Zoom or however that has to happen and start putting thoughts together and documenting those thoughts and coming up with some kind of advisory plan and say, look, you've tried this, you've had a year to do this. This is what we think is the right step. You need to evaluate it and listen to us. At least give us a listen.
Yeah, give us a listen. And I think you maybe we're taking for granted that that's already happening, and maybe we just need to
or we don't even know.
We have no clue. Maybe we just need to go do it and then recognize that we did our part to make sure that our voice was heard, because what's coming out of their voice is nowhere close to what anybody understands. And so, here we are today on the morning of an announcement that's about to happen.
Right.
And this one, of course, like anything else, it gets leaked.
How does it get out there so quickly? It's just amazing.
It's amazing. I got this message last night.
I want those people to tell us what's really going on behind the scenes, too, though. We have to kind of get some kind of insider information on what's really happening. I think that would be very important to the people of Ontario.
Well, I've made a bunch of friends in the media outlets over the last year. And so I got a notice last night.
Yeah, you're like the CTV darling right now. I see you on the news pretty much every week.
Something like that. It seems like they found that I've got a voice that represents people that are without a voice, and I'm so grateful. Like I don't take it for granted. I'm so grateful that I can get on there, share my opinion, and this last one, I felt like I was a bit punchy because I really I am at the end of the rope. I had some things I wanted to say, but unfortunately got cut off.
Was that a time thing, or was that you were just making some pretty arguable points? And who knows? Maybe the producer in the control room was like, "Okay."
I hope not, because I think here's what happens when you're complacent and you're hopeful and you're optimistic, and you're okay with. I'm just looking for their leadership, and that's all I've been asking for. Just give us good leadership. We're faithful. We're going to be able to follow some good directions and get out of this. And that's been my message up until the last interview.
Right.
And so I'm hopeful that what you're suggesting is not what's going on, and people, as a result of what I had to say, have come out of the woodwork, and they've been very supportive, and we're with you, and we stand by you, and don't let this happen, and you should fight them. And that's where the push to become that advocate for small business has been more apparent now than ever before, because I guess I'm simply expressing an emotion that they're feeling, and I said, this pause for whatever the government's doing for us was called the emergency brake.
Yeah.
And I just got a chance to say, you're applying the emergency brake to a pile up on the 401. This is the cars already crashed. They crashed like wave 2.
Yeah.
For small business, you're pulling an emergency brake, but the car's on fire. We're already out of it. What's the chance to save that? your break isn't going to make a difference. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Let me just get that.
Yeah. Well, this is an operating business, so.
Yeah, I don't know if I can right now though, so I don't want to be able to disappoint somebody if I can't help them. In any case, yeah. So I think that the use of terms they got to be cautious with, because that also becomes a criticism in the background. It gets people to say, like,
And now
"What are you
you're
breaking?"
You're doing what Trump does, is come up with these slogans and
Right.
campaigns. Like,
Yeah, don't campaign.
don't turn that into that.
Don't
Like, let's
don't
just
campaign me. And the other one was circuit breaker. Hey, listen, the lights have been off for a year. We are, and this is the other stat that blew my mind. Peel GTA area in our region. For those of you that don't know, we're in Southern Ontario. But in our area, we have endured the longest lockdown in North America.
Whoa.
Yeah. And so we were hitting, I saw the numbers. I think personal services over the course of the year saw over 260 days of lockdown, like no business, like we weren't able to. And so when you start to put those together and you recognize the timing and the not open for business side, then, you know, you're like, come on, like, how is it that we are so far into this, doing the same thing over and over again, not getting the results we want, and we just keep going back to it? I think the last count for us is 130 days of not being open. So, hey, you know, I remain hopeful. That was my favorite thing to say. But, you know, in this last interview, I felt like I was at the point where there is no rope left for us.
Yeah.
So we better do something here. We got to see some leadership. And like I was about to say, we are on the morning of this next announcement, which I got fed last night about 11 o'clock in advance. And it is going to take us into a stay-at-home order.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, I'm not sure if that's a good thing or not. You know, somebody sent me a note this morning saying it's time to mount the protest. And I'm like, let's wait for the announcement, because the devil's in the details. So this could be a chance. And my fingers are so crossed, they're bleeding. Like, they're so tight that they just come out with logic today. Don't, you know, pass it on to, well, I'm going to pass this on to the minister. How about this? This is your decision.
Exactly.
This is your leadership group. Deliver the message. Make it clear. Make us all understand it. We're about to go into the rescheduled spring break for kids. Like, let's everybody understand how that's going to affect every piece of our business, every piece of our family, every piece of our daily operation. Just tell me. I'm going to believe you if it makes sense. And if it doesn't make sense, we might as well give up.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Well, we don't want to do that.
We don't want to do that. But, I mean, it sounds dramatic enough to say I'm at the end of my rope.
And it made me think back when the first wave came through and they started trumpeting, well, you know, it's the second wave. And it's like, well, what have you done to prepare?
Mm-hmm.
If you have been briefed that there's a second wave coming, what have you put into action? Have you put up a temporary hospital? There's a mall near my house with an empty Target store. Okay. Why can't you facilitate that? Have makeshift bed, like almost like a MASH unit,
Right.
let's just say.
Yes.
But then you hear, well, there's not enough nurses and not enough doctors. They've all gone to the U.S. It's like, okay, well, where's the problem here?
Right.
Is it we're trying to, the entire country completely suffers economically because we're trying to save one institution, and that's the medical institution, from crumbling. Well, obviously, you guys have failed out of the gate. You need to bring in more staff, bring in more. Like, I have no idea what I'm talking about when it comes to the medical profession because I don't know it. But common sense to me says, why aren't there enough doctors?
Right.
I think we're paying it at a decent level. I'm not sure if it's competitive enough to be competitive with the U.S., but for Canada, why are we short on nurses and why are we short on doctors? Why don't we address this?
Yeah, I think we've got a lot of cleanup to do because we've stressed our system and our programming to its limits. And knowing what we know now, I think we have to really reevaluate how we operate and what makes the most sense.
There needs to be changes, not on a budgetary. Like the thing is, our government has changed everything based on a budget rather than on what makes sense. How do we? I'm going everywhere here, but my parents live in Oakville, and there's been so much, so many buildings and homes being erected there, to the point where the infrastructure just cannot sustain already what the population is now,
Right.
let alone what's coming. This is what I don't understand about certain communities, cities, and towns where it's like, how can you allow that to happen when you haven't addressed the infrastructure? How are you going to be able to have everybody here owns a car? The roads are 6 lanes wide and it's jammed already. What do you think is going to happen? Like, how do you make that a nice civil environment to live in when you're creating more population just for the almighty buck?
Yeah, that's where we get into that discussion again about how is it that these decisions are being made and how transparent are they?
Yeah.
And we in this environment too suffer the same challenges. We've got 2 massive developments happening as a bookend to our community,
big time.
which is going to strangle the commute. It's going to really kind of pin down this community, and you wonder how is it that they made decisions to make that happen.
And I'll guarantee you the city's going to say, we're going to turn the lakeshore into 1 lane for mostly bicycles and pedestrians. It's like, you can't even get around now.
Right.
And this is during COVID. It's busy.
This is another call. This is another reason for us to open our eyes,
Yeah.
to pay attention, and to recognize that collectively we can do something. Independently, it's going to be a lot of effort. So
how do we start?
this is my recommendation.
Okay.
I think that if you feel like you've got a grievance, if you feel like you've got something to say and you just don't think that there's a platform for you to do that, I would spend 15 minutes on the internet and look up associations that are trying to get your message across. And it's very simple. I mean, the beautiful part about the search engines now is that you don't have to be so specific, and you'll be led in the direction of. So look for associations, look for organizations, look for responsible decision making. Like in maybe it's in your industry, that's where you start. If it's a business that you want to be able to represent and have us move forward from a business perspective, but also from a mental health perspective, from a single mom with 2 kids fighting COVID or looking for support. Like, I mean, there is so many resources available to us that we would never know unless we went to look for them or have somebody waving their flags, and getting an awareness piece out there to say, in my business, in one of them anyway, this, there's an association, Allied Beauty, or I can't remember the name of it, but the point is that they've got somewhere around 60,000 signatures pushing the government to do their agenda, and their agenda is very clearly laid out. I want you to do this, this, and this. So now I feel like maybe I can put my support behind that organization. That organization is going to drive that right to the key decision makers.
Right.
Whether they want to hear it or not, they have an obligation to take it.
Yes.
Whether they act on it or not is the question. But they have an obligation to take it and to listen to it.
Right.
Because when being presented in a formal kind of environment, then that I think is our best answer.
Yeah, you have to play. You have to play that game. It's a game.
It's a game.
You have to play that game in order to get a set of ears and eyes on it. Marching and protesting brings some awareness, but I find when people rap, they leave, and it's like it's moved on, and that's it. But when you have pen to paper,
yes, it gets back to a very common term in my other business, which is a call to action.
Mm-hmm.
So if you were to put out a campaign and you were looking to drive awareness and you wanted somebody to take action, then you need to really spell out exactly what it is you want to have happen here.
Right.
And I find that these associations, outside of just people making comments, the associations are really kind of formalizing that process, and they are calling to action what they expect to see next. And so if you didn't feel like you wanted to lend support to an organization, perhaps it could be for your own good mental health to create your own, group, and this could be a friends, it could be a family, it could be, your weekly bitch session that
Yeah.
just kind of gets you to dump your information. And, sometimes the best ideas aren't from the people you expect.
Right.
As a matter of fact, I've seen that in business through and through. Some of the best ideas I've ever been able to pull from people have come from the front reception person.
Right.
The gatekeeper that had more insights because they had a broader scope of things. They weren't like this.
Right.
And so sometimes it's going to take somebody, like I've said before, going to Mars in the Crazyville, like, dude, we can't do that. But when you start to picture what that's possible there, then you bring back that little inkling of this is possible here.
Right.
So sometimes you got to go to Mars to be able to get to, back to Earth.
Yeah.
And in this case, I think connectedness is going to be our saving grace. Like more of us that are speaking the same language,
Right.
have the same script, identify what our possible outcomes are. Just like in business. I mean, we do all the same things. Like we're applying the same thinking that we would to running a business, running a house, running a family, to what the government should be doing for us right now. And when I try to move something through in my family environment, the dictator and the totalitarian guy that exists in some families coming down with this is the rule, and you always find that that's met with opposition, and there's a much better way to navigate that, and that's to rally everybody behind what you would like to get done. So if I can convince my family, my kids, that it's a good idea to go clean the yard, it's not going to be me saying, we're cleaning the yard today, because that meets with aggression and,
Right.
and challenge. It actually, for me to be able to be creative about how I can get them to think they've authored the idea, because wouldn't it be great if you could bounce on the trampoline today? And then, of course, the answer is yes.
Yeah.
Well, we really can't because it's filled with leaves. And why don't we all get outside and see if we can put that together so you guys can have a fun afternoon?
Right.
You can see there's a
Total
difference in
different
the
motivation,
in the way that you operate. That leadership tip just came from Louie J here at Staying Alive, and that goes right to our elected politicians. So. Listen, it's been a great conversation again today, Frank. I appreciate.
Yeah, I also want to remind our listeners and viewers too. Like we've been kind of stuck on this topic for the last couple of podcasts because it's happening now. We're living history. We're in the moment, and we're witnessing some decision making that just is completely confusing, and we have to address it. We do want to have more guests once restrictions open up a bit. We might do a few Zoom calls and stuff and get back to the topics that we love to talk about, which is entrepreneurship and business and all those interesting things like marketing and people that are starting their own ventures. That's what really, charges us. And we do want to get back to that, but we think it's really important to be talking about this.
Yeah, it's topical. It's relevant right now for us. And it's something that I think therapeutically is kind of getting us through. So, I don't want it to be the focus, but I think right now it's the right time.
Yeah.
And when it's not the right time, we'll move away from it.
Right.
But in the meanwhile, thanks guys for joining us. I do appreciate everything that you've commented on. And to that point, send in, your suggestions on what we should be talking about. And if you found that this was remotely entertaining, maybe even insightful, then please give us a like, give us a follow, give us a subscribe, and share it, because that's how this stuff works. And I'm grateful for your time to spend with me. So thanks, everybody. We'll talk to you soon. Enjoy your day and the beautiful weather coming our way.